Oh boy, my first official movie review of 2019. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late on this one. I'm about a week late or so on the Glass review, but, I had other things taking place, and I'm glad to finally catch up on the movie with all of you. But am I really that happy to catch up on Glass with all of you? Spoilers ahead for not just Glass, but also Unbreakable and Split, because if you're going into this movie without having seen Unbreakable and Split, you're gonna be lost. Basically, Unbreakable and Split and Glass are all part of this trilogy that M. Night Shyamalan has put together that details sort of a world and a universe where superheroics and special abilities are more down to earth, more gritty, and more laced in the human condition than, say, the Marvel Universe or DC stuff. Unbreakable followed the story of Bruce Willis, whose extraordinary abilities include super strength and vulnerability to some extent, and an ability to perceive the wrongdoings of others. He knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men by just touching them. And that was a cool idea. I didn't know that's what I was getting into when I first saw Unbreakable all the way back in the day. And also the reveal of Sam Jackson's character, Mr. Glass, and how he is sort of this physically fragile character, but has a huge intellect and this mind that just can't be beat, and how it turns out he's actually an evil mastermind, or he perceives himself as an evil mastermind. I like that reveal. I like the narrative that those characters went on in that movie, and it all works so well. I didn't even realize I was in a comic book movie until about the last 15 or so minutes of the movie. So I thought, interesting premise, cool, good job, M. Night. Moving on to Split, a couple of years ago, which touted itself more as a horror film and had this very commanding lead performance from James McAvoy as his character Kevin Wendell Crumb, who's inhabited by 23 or 24 some different personalities, one of which happens to be a very animalistic and super strong character called the Beast. And while I happen to mention, I think in my Split review from a couple years ago, it didn't paint quite the most flattering picture of people with dissociative identity disorder, I wasn't too offended about it. I went into that movie not really looking for accuracy or anything really sympathetic, because the character is a villain. So it's going to be a little out there and weird and silly, and thankfully his performance was very captivating. And that was fine enough for that movie. I was able to engage and enjoy that narrative through and through. His performance, his relationship with one of his potential victims in Anya Taylor-Joy, and ultimately the reveal at the end of why she didn't become one of his victims. But then the other shoe drops in the last couple of minutes of the movie, and it's revealed that, whoa, Split takes place in the same universe as Unbreakable, and that the Horde, as Kevin is come to be called, is actually a character who has special abilities, and with each of his personalities, he takes on those physical attributes. So the Beast is an actual literal beast. So I thought, okay, cool. Bruce Willis is there at the diner. It's implied he's gonna be hunting down this new threat in the Horde. Great. M. Night's gonna make a sequel, isn't he? And yep, he made a sequel. Glass. And upon hearing that he made a sequel and upon seeing the trailer, my first response was to say, okay, I'm tentatively excited about this just because I like these characters. Let's see how it's going to be wrecked. It's very messy, sloppy, but thankfully the characters are still endearing, the performances are still good, which unites not just Bruce Willis' David Dunn with Kevin Wendell Crumb, but also brings Elijah Price, aka Mr. Glass, the titular Glass, into the foray, played by Sam Jackson. And the first third of this movie is very enjoyable. You get to see what down-to-earth superheroics Bruce Willis has been up to in the past couple of years. You get to see him do this like one-man war on small crimes with his son, who's like his tech support. You get to see him actually be heroic and rescue people from Kevin Wendell Crumb. You get to see a very down-to-earth fight between the super strong Beast and Willis's character, who goes by the moniker of Overseer. I like that. I like that it wasn't big highfalutin action with infinity stones and special effects all over the place. I'm glad it was just this down and out knockout fight between two superpowered dudes who, whenever they crash into a pillar, the building shakes. Sure. And then they get captured by Sarah Paulson as a psychiatrist named Dr. Ellie Staple and put in the same psychiatric institute as Mr. Glass, who's been catatonic for several years. And it's her goal in the next 3 days to be able to rehabilitate all three of these patients and convince them that they're not actually superpowered individuals, they're just people with a mental affliction, and that they've come up with this grand illusion of grandeur for themselves, that they are special. That would have been an interesting idea had the previous two movies not set up that this is definitively about extraordinary people. She toys with this notion for both Kevin and David specifically, and tries to make them doubt that they are in fact powered individuals. That David's delusion of being super strong and invulnerable has something to tie into not just the train crash he was in Unbreakable, but also sort of delving further back into his childhood with an incident where he nearly drowned, hence his weakness to water. And there's a point where he questions it for all of like 30 seconds probably. That could have been interesting if that hadn't already all been done in Unbreakable, and if it wasn't already established in Unbreakable that no, he legitimately is super strong. People witnessed it. He messed some people up because of it. Had Shyamalan had the forethought, if he was thinking back in the day, like, you know what, I'm gonna do a whole arc about this, is he or isn't he superpowered? Then yeah, that would have been cool, and he probably would have played it a little bit, more subtle and maybe not as obvious in those films. But here, that brief moment of doubt, as compelling an idea as that could have been, you don't buy into because it's been established that no, he is superpowered. This is a pointless argument. It was established in Split that Kevin's physical body chemistry changes with each personality shift. You see it take place. His veins take on black coloring and stick out of his neck like crazy. That's not a natural thing for someone with DID to experience, even if they are really severely diagnosed with that. Interesting idea, but it comes too little too late. It's unfortunate that a good solid 70 to 80% of the movie tries to focus on this sole premise of questioning whether or not these characters are legitimately superpowered or not, when clearly they are. Sarah Paulson's character, the Dr. Ellie Staple, while I like her performance and she is something of a walking enigma herself throughout most of the movie, whenever she is trying to take the logical, scientific method approach to explaining why these occurrences happened, you don't buy it. You don't buy it as an audience member. The characters in the movie don't buy it, even if they do it's very brief, and then they'll do something extraordinary. David will knock down his steel door to his cell. Oh, okay, I guess I am superpowered. Don't know why I doubted that. So it's an interesting idea that could have been played with in the earlier installments, but it's delivered here as though, okay, this is going to be some kind of big character arc for all three of these main characters. And it really isn't. The performances are, again, they're solid for what they need to be. McAvoy dominates every second he's in this film. Bruce Willis as David Dunn is very reserved, very quieter, but it works for this character because he is playing the stoic central protagonist. Samuel L. Jackson, when he gets the chance to go big and broad in this movie, he does, and it is kind of fun to watch. His dialogue is a little bit too on the nose. I get it, the character is immersed in comic book lore, and I get that a couple of terms of comic book, mythology and stuff will probably seep its way into his dialogue to explain some stuff, but man, does that get annoying. For both him and his mother, they both talk about this is the part in the story where the characters culminate and there's a showdown display of powers. Or oh, Mom, it's not the showdown. This was an origin story. And at the very end with his mother saying, this is the beginning of a shared universe. Something to that extent. Wink, wink, get it? This is kind of like the MCU, right, audience? Nah, not so much. If it wasn't for the fact that this one premise is stretched out beyond what it's capable of kind of serving in the overall movie, and if it wasn't for the fact that the dialogue in this movie is special. It's a true testament to these actors that they're able to kind of deliver on some of this dialogue. The Hedwig personality for McAvoy's character doesn't speak like a 9-year-old does. It's supposed to be this perpetually 9-year-old boy who's the personality. No 9-year-old talks like this, but it is entertaining to see McAvoy try to pull something off with this dialogue that sounds more like a toddler than anything else. For all of Samuel L. Jackson's huge, postulating on comic book terminology and to hear him kind of say something like, I'm not going to give you one of those regular supervillain monologues, even though he's been monologuing for about 5 minutes straight. Hey, at least he looks like he's having fun doing it. It's good to see Spencer Treat Clark back as David's son, as that was one of the more interesting relationships in Unbreakable. I'm glad you get to see him have a little more FaceTime with his dad in this version, where he's in on the secret, supporting his dad's mission. He takes on something of a more active role in the plot, which ultimately ends up in a very stupid reveal, but whatever. I'm not going to hold that against Spencer Treat Clark, because he's going for it at least. Anya Taylor-Joy, while it doesn't make much sense that her character would be wanting to help her former terrorizer and captor too much. I get that the reason why she was spared by him is that he found out she herself was sort of damaged by people around her, much like he was. So they try to make that their connection and through line. It becomes way too close, way too fast. She becomes way too trusting of this character who terrorized her for the whole of Split. All the wariness and all the self-preservation she demonstrated in that previous movie kind of goes out the window in favor of her immediately having this connection with the Horde. I'm not saying it wouldn't been able to get to that point, but because this movie kind of has a balancing act issue with its supporting cast and its main cast, it feels really tacked on and last minute, and they rapidly get to, okay, she just immediately trusts him now, or immediately is in his camp rooting for him. Charlene Woodward as Mr. Glass's mother. She was in Unbreakable, had her in old lady makeup there. It didn't look that convincing. They have her in older old lady makeup now. Still doesn't look that convincing. She is trying to pull off this very supportive and matronly figure. She gets stuck with a lot of the comic book terminology as well in her dialogue, and it doesn't seem very natural, but damn it, she is trying so hard. All these actors and actresses are trying so hard to pull off something with this very on the nose and very awkward dialogue, which a lot of times took me out of the movie quite a bit. I just started chuckling to myself about you really thought that line was a good line, huh, M. Night? And then in the last third of the movie, where it is twist upon twist upon twist, it's revealed something about Kevin's origins, how they're connected to Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson, where it's revealed something about Dr. Ellie Staple, and then at the very end with a grand reveal of things will never be the same. It all kind of rang a little hollow at the end. Part of me kind of anticipated that it would ring hollow. This is way too down-to-earth a series of films. They've never really gone for huge spectacle in their climaxes, so I wasn't expecting Glass to do that. It teases that there's going to be a grand showdown in a huge public space that, is on par with a lot of other superhero movies. And I knew that was a fake out. I knew they weren't going to get to that. Maybe that was supposed to be obvious, but even so, the climax here felt extremely defeated. These are characters that you do come to appreciate in little ways and little forms, and they're kind of very unceremoniously just dumped at the end in favor of a grand mystery that you didn't even think was necessary for this film, and honestly don't care about in the end. Glass is a very mixed bag of things for me. I do like aspects of it. The filmmaking is solid, the performances are solid. There are interesting ideas that are never given an opportunity to fully bloom because a majority of the film is in traction, essentially, with psychoanalyzing characters who are superheroes, who have special abilities that we've seen on display several times before. Why are we playing into this whole, well, are those real or are they not real? Nothing else established in the previous movies would dissuade you from that. And of course, I can't leave without talking about M. Night's cameo in this movie, which apparently he gave the character he's cameoing as a through line throughout both Unbreakable, Split, and Glass. Yep. All his appearances in all three of these movies apparently has been the same character. In the dialogue, he talks to Bruce Willis and says like, oh yeah, I probably met you at this point in my life, which he did in Unbreakable. No one but me in the audience got that because I watched Unbreakable and Split like last night before I went to this movie, so it was fresh in my mind that M. Night was there. I didn't think that really mattered much, but he gave himself a character arc. Good on you, M. Night. No one but me and you noticed. If you were a fan of Unbreakable and Split and are prepared for a little bit of a letdown with Glass, you'll find some things to enjoy with this movie. It's not as good as the previous installments in terms of thematic elements, in terms of its story being a little bit more coherent, a little bit more better paced, and with character arcs tying together better. Yeah, Unbreakable and Split did it better. Off to a great start for 2019, aren't we? Nothing screams excitement for the new year like meh.